Good Voch Rabbi Sai. So Baruch Hashem, we're here in Chicago, and we want to thank Hatzalah. Hatzalah Chicago, they have a beautiful, beautiful multi-million-dollar facility, and they lent us this beautiful room, very high-tech room with 80-inch screens and 3 of them, and really good Wi-Fi. Yesterday, I had one of my biggest nisyanis. I want to share with you one of my biggest nisyanis. I'll tell you why. Thursday morning, I had to get up really early in the morning to prepare shir because we were leaving to the airport at 8 o'clock. So I had to prepare, give shir all within until 8 o'clock. And, pack and do everything. And it was one of those hotels I found out at the last minute that you have to clean the kitchen. Otherwise, they charge you this, and you have to take off all the linen, the whole thing. Okay, so go through all that. Finally make it to the taxi and get to the airport. Everything's great. On the flight, I said, we have to prepare. I want to give a second shir on Thursday. It's a great opportunity to come to Chicago, give another shir for tomorrow's daf. The only issue is that maybe turn it off completely. He doesn't really need to be on Zoom now. Good. So get to Chicago. And because I was preparing shir, I didn't really get to sleep on the flight. Now, to give shir, 9:30 at night is a decent time, but not realizing that I missed the whole night's sleep. So you get here, the whole thing, the internet wasn't strong enough, the whole thing, people coming over, I didn't sleep the whole night, it was on edge. And after giving the shir and everything, it turns out that everything that we did got erased. I came home, I was like, I couldn't believe it. Big Nisayan. Go through all that, not sleeping, preparing, going, coming, and giving the shir. Prepared 39 charts on the flight, 39, only to be erased completely. Baruch Hashem, they got somebody was recording the Zoom during the shir from a different angle. The first 10 minutes are almost non-existent, but it gets better as the shir goes on. We got to continue. We got to plow weiter. There's always an assign. There's always something that's going to stop you. There's always a Yetzer Hara that comes and says, here, it's not good, it's this, and it's not working. We go weiter. So here we are in another place. We're starting over again. Friday afternoon, I want to thank Dovid for coming out. I know it's difficult before Shabbos. Yisroel for the support. So all I have right now, in terms of emails, I just want to show one picture of Reb Fischel, the famous Reb Fischel. If you want to know what he looks like, he's the guy on the right, the guy with the white beard. It was his daughter's wedding yesterday. It's a tremendous mazel to Reb Fischel. He was a very, very big support when it came to Megillah and other Masechtas. I think he gave over $200,000 to MDY this year in terms of Masechtas and Gemaras and everything. Chavali's not giving more for the coming Masechta. We need like another $50,000 in the next week, but okay, that's a different story. Now, hint, Reb Fischel. Fine. So that's Reb Nachum Horowitz in the picture with him, both from Baltimore. So a tremendous, tremendous mazel tov. And whoever wants to step in instead of Reb Fischel, it will be a tremendous chus for them. We're giving out Gemaras. We're starting again, coming up, another volume in Yevamos. So here we go. We're in the middle of this very exciting sugya, and we're going to have a completely different sugya today as well. We're just going to finish off the sugya of Isser Chal Al Isser. Sponsors, thank you. Who are the sponsors today? The Koilel sponsor for the month is Mr. Anonymous and zechus of Hil Ben Sardino Rivka Bas Feged. There should be zechus Zer Shel Kayama. Another Paris Koilel for the day as a zechus for good health and Besuras Tobias for myself and our whole family. I guess it's the same person, but he's doing a day at a time. Paris Chodesh friends and family Refuah Shlema for Yaakov Yehuda Ben Gittel. Paris Chodesh Bresler, Austein, Rosenberg, Schulman, and Tobias families. The zechus Refuah Shlema for Rosh Yeshiva. Rabbi Yisroel, Meir, Dovid, Ben, Yehuda, Druk, Shlita. Parnas Chodesh, by the Lock and Lebovic families, Lakewood NJ, Jersey. Because Torah is the best. Sgula. Close. Parnas Chodesh, Chodesh Nisan, sponsored by Yoli, Lidishmas, Dov, Pinchas, Ben Moshe, Alav Shalom, Lidishmas, Rucham, Achaya, Fruma, Bas, Dov, Pinchas, Alav Shalom, Lidishmas, Yechiel, Shrago, Ben, Avram, Alevi, Alav Shalom. Parnas Chodesh, Ahron Fraiman, L'schus, Parnasa, and Siyat Shmai, and continue that slug to rebellion. By Market and Lynn, Hamfling, Lilu Nishmas, Chavashendel Bas, Tzvi, Yishkoyach. So we're holding the Amud Aleph, the top words. So as a review, we had a big machlokes about Isser Chalal Isser. Can one Isser, if you're doing two Isurim, could one go on top of the other? Could it be over on both? So what was the case? Here, first chart on your 80-inch screen TV, we have two sisters married to two brothers. One of the brothers goes belly up. Yehuda is not allowed to marry his wife. Why? Because Yehuda is married to Leah, El, and Rachel is her sister, so that's called Achoisisha. But there's another problem. She also happens to be the wife of your brother, Eshesach. And if there's no mitzvah of Yibum, then you're not allowed to marry your brother's wife, Eshesach. You're never allowed to marry your sister-in-law. The only time you're allowed to marry your sister-in-law, in very simple terms. Yevamos is very simple until we start confusing it. We start throwing out these words and it gets confusing. But everybody has a sister-in-law. Everybody knows what a sister-in-law is. You're not allowed to marry your sister-in-law, ever. Unless the brother dies without children. But in this case, the brother died without children. But this sister-in-law happens to be your own wife's sister. They're both sisters, Rachel and Leah. So therefore, you can't marry Rachel. And if you can't marry her, then the original Isser of sister-in-law remains. Eshesach remains. So this woman, Rachel, has two Isurim on her. First of all, she's Eshesach. Second of all, she's Achoisisha, Isha. She's your own wife's sister. So he went, Yehuda's a Shegitz, and he went and he married her anyways. How many Averis did he do? One or two? Machlokes. According to Rabbi Yossi, he's over two. Because Rabbi Yossi holds in this case, Isser Chalal Isser. And the Gemara explained yesterday, well, maybe he doesn't really hold Isser Chalal Isser, but only in very special situations called a Isser Moisef. Or maybe even in an Isser Kailon. Isser Moisef means when you add and expand the Avera. The Avera was like this, and you expand it sideways. It becomes a larger Avera. So maybe such Avera also applies to him. Since it expanded to other areas, it expands also to him. Okay, so now the Gemara, then the Gemara brought three machlokes in. And wanted to relate it, how does it fit into this machlokes of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon? Rabbi Yossi says you're over on two Isurim. Rabbi Shimon in this case says you're only over on one. Rabbi Shimon b'derech klal says you're over on one. Yeah, it's very gishmak. A person does two averis, he eats chazer on Yom Kippur. How many averis does he get? One for Yom Kippur, two for chazer also. Okay. So the Gemara brought three cases. Case number one is that a Yisroel performed an avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. A Zar, Yisroel, should not be performing avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. He performed in the Beis Hamikdash, that's aver number one. On Shabbos, it's aver number two. How many averes did he get? So again, we have a machlokes, what Rebbe said. Did Rebbe say he's over on two? Or Rebbe said no, he's only over on one. Another case, very similar. A balmum, a guy missing, let's say, a limb, who's also happens to be his tamei. Performs the avodah on a Wednesday afternoon, in the middle of the week, not on Shabbos. So number one, he's not supposed to be performing because he's missing an arm. Number two, he's not supposed to be performing avodah because he's also tamei. How many averes did he do? One or two? And then we finally had a machlokes, and this is different. Here, let me just show you the chart so you can see. Where was it? Here. These are the three cases. And then you have a Yisroel who eats a bird who wasn't shechted, but it was Malika. Malika looks like this, if I can find it. Here's Malika. The kohen takes his thumb nail and goes through the back of the neck of the bird. That's how you're supposed to do the special shechita called Malika in the Beis Hamikdash. Typically, if someone takes his thumb and goes through a bird and you eat it, that's called nevela. But in the Beis Hamikdash, when chatos, you're allowed to, that's the only way you're supposed to eat it, through this. But Yisroel is not allowed to eat kachim. He's not allowed to eat a chatos. And Yisroel goes ahead and eats this bird. So is he over on nevela, or he's only over on eating kachim? He's not allowed to eat kachim. So these are the three cases. We're going to see that the final case, Zar Shachar Malika, is very different than the other two cases. So today we're going to learn these additional three things on the screen. The concept we learned yesterday, the concept of Isser Moisef, and we're going to explain it a little bit, explain it again today, and Isser Kailal, and bevasachas. Bevasachas is the easiest thing to understand. It means that two averos happen simultaneously. And that's simpler to understand and simpler to understand that you're chayav on two. Why? Because when you have one avera that exists and you're trying to add another avera to it, let's say this piece of meat is nevela, and you're trying to, and tomorrow is Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur comes after the nevela. It tries to put itself on top of the nevela. It's not going to stick. Why? It doesn't allow for anything to stick to it. I already have an avera. This piece of meat is already also for me to eat. Are you going to add another thing to it? Another thing to it? It's not going to go. But when Yom Kippur, Shalom Aleichem, Yishkoyach for hosting us here, Mantros, you know your brother's my neighbor, and he's one of the biggest Talmid Chacham in our neighborhood. Unbelievable. But when you have two Isurim that happen simultaneously, that is understandable that they're going to connect. They're going to stick. Why? Because neither one of them can knock the other guy off. So they both happen together. Okay. So these are the three things we're going to try to learn today. Says the Gemara b'Maikum Mifligi. So the Gemara is going to try a number of ways. I know this is a real sugya here, a real heavy-duty sugya. Don't get discouraged. It's geschmack stuff. What is the machloikis going on over here? So the Gemara tries to say like this: Be'isur kailo va'aliba derb yaisi. Shaila number one is perhaps the machloikis is in the middle thing called isur kailo. The Gemara is going to explain what that means. And the question is what Rabbi Yossi holds. Again, we have a Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon, very easy to remember. Rabbi Yossi says when a person does two Yisurim, like Eshes Ach and Achos Isha, Yechai for two. And Rabbi Shimon says Yechai for one. Now, the three case machloikis, these three cases that we discussed, a Zar that did Avodah Misamid and Shabbos, etc., what is the machloikis there? What happened? It's not machloikis, it's a crazy machloikis. Each one swore that that's what his Rebbe said. The famous Rebbe said this. I swear Rebbe said this. Well, they're making stuff up. The Gemara is going to ask this. What? He's lying. What's going on here? Shikurikum and Shakir. Fine. What is the machloikis? Attempt number one is B'isur Koil V'Aliba the Rabbi Yossi. The whole machloikis is what exactly did Rabbi Yossi say? Rabbi Chia Savar. Rabbi Chia holds Rabbi Yossi B'isur Koil Mechayev Tarti. When you have a case like this, now, in this case right over here, this case, this is Isser Moisef. What happens? Yehuda went and married Leah. What is that? We went through this case yesterday, so we'll do it quickly. When Yehuda starts off, he's number one, he marries one of the sisters, Leah. So for him, Rachel becomes what? Achos Isha. So number one is Achos Isha. Later on, when his brother Ruvain marries the other sister Rachel, so we're going to add another Isser called Eshesach. And because that, so now Rachel becomes more Asr, Eshesach, so we're going to add that also to Yehuda. That's Isser Moisef. We're adding a stronger Isser. The Isser becomes, it expands. Now, Reb Chia is saying no. This whole case was only said like this. When what happened was the guy that's going to die, he's the one that married first. Ruvain married first. So when he married Rachel first, what happened first? Isser Eshesach happened first. He married Rachel, so now Rachel is to all the other brothers, to Yehuda and to Shimon, and all the other brothers look at Rachel and they say, oh, you're our brother's wife. Our brother's wife is called Eshesach. So everybody's already usher on her. If we compare her to this piece of meat, this nevela, everybody's usher. You can't eat it. Now Yom Kippur comes, you didn't add anything to the nevela. Nevela was usher to eat. This woman, you're not allowed to marry her. She's your brother's wife. Now you come and you add something called Achos Isha to her. Doesn't do anything. Didn't add any. I'm still usher. I was usher for the last 10 years to marry Rachel. So what happens? I married Rachel's sister called Leah. And now there's another Isser called Achos Isha, my wife's sister. Didn't do anything. But what it did is, it added that you become Asr to other women, the other sisters. That's Isser Kailo. That's like Yom Kippur. Let's look at Yom Kippur for a second. This piece of meat is an Avela. I can't eat it. Comes Yom Kippur, Nothing happened. I'm not allowed to eat the meat before. I'm not allowed to eat the meat today. I'm not allowed to eat the meat yesterday. It's an avela. But Yom Kippur makes all food in the world asur. All the food. Even chocolate cake is asur. Even pizza is asur. So because Yom Kippur came and made a general isser, and it was kailal this, it included this piece in avela. In other words, even if this piece of meat was 100% kosher and not asur, today it would be asur because of Yom Kippur. That's isser kailal. It's just a general isser that also envelops what I'm holding here. So I married this lady Leah. All the sisters became asur. It's like all the food in the world, including my brother's wife. That's very weak, but perhaps in that Rabbi Yossi holds that in that I'll add another isser. Typically, he doesn't hold isser chal isser. One isser doesn't go on top of another. But because it's an isser kailal, I'm including other people over here in this isser. Not that I'm expanding the isser. I didn't make Rachel more asur. I made other people asur. Other people became asur to. So Mela, that's isser kailal. So in isser kailal, I'm going to have a machlokes what Rabbi Yossi holds in isser kailal. That's the Gemara's attempt now. B'isser kailal v'aliv the Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Chia saw Rabbi Yossi b'isser kailal mechayev tarti. Rabbi Chia holds. So in this case, you see, there's no isser moisef over here. I didn't add anything to Rachel. It's only isser kailal. So my question is whether or not Rabbi Yossi said in this case yechayev two averos or only one avera. Only in this case, when the guy Yehuda gets married first, and that's Isser Moisef, that's the case that Yechayev 2, because in Isser Moisef, Rabbi Yossi says 2, but in Isser Kailal, he only says Yechayev 1. Okay, fine. Now the Gemara just goes in to say, why is it called the Isser Kailal? Says the Gemara, Bishleim is Zar, Mikar Shari b'melacha v'asab avoda. When you're Yisroel, you're allowed to perform melacha on a Wednesday and a Tuesday and a Friday. But you're not allowed to perform avoid in the Beis Hamikdash. Asylo Shabbos, comes Shabbos, right? Today, right now, in a few hours, comes Shabbos, and all of a sudden, we're not allowed to drive cars. All of a sudden, we're not allowed to do a lot of stuff. And including in all that stuff, you're also not allowed to do avoid in the Beis Hamikdash. Whatever that avoid is, the Gemara is going to describe. What's so usher to do avoid in the Beis Hamikdash? You're allowed to do shchita, even a Yisroel could do shchita. Okay. But whatever that avodah is, Shabbos came and made a lot of things asur. It's like a lot of food is asur in Yom Kippur. There are a lot of melachas that are asur in Shabbos. So because it added something called all the melachas, I'm not allowed to do melacha. So I'm also not allowed to do avodah. Right? The avodah is like that piece of meat. Okay. Now the avodah didn't become more asur. The avodah remained the same isur. Just what? Just the person became more asur on other things, on other foods, on Yom Kippur, on other melachas, on Shabbos. That's Isser Kailal. Balmum. Okay, now let's look at a Balmum. The second case. Balmum, a guy's missing a limb. In the beginning, a Kayin who's a Balmum is allowed to eat kachim, right? If a Kayin is a Balmum, Rabbi say, if a Kayin is a Balmum, he could eat kachim. What can't he do? He can't do avoid in the Beis Hamikdash. That's something else. So if we go back, it's a little here. These are the three cases. Zor b'avodah b'Shabbos, we explained how that works. Now we're holding in the middle case, Balmum b'Tuma. How do you get an Isser Kailal? Mikar shar b'achila v'asa b'avodah. Itmele, once he becomes tamei, migu the mitzvah b'achila. Once a kain becomes tamei, he's not allowed to eat kachim when he's tamei. It's a mamish. You get a misa b'dei shomayim mitzvah b'avodah. So he also becomes asur in performing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. That's Isser Kailal. Ela Malika, and the Gemara is going to stick with this question right here. We're not going away from this question. This is a given. Malika. How do you do Malika? You take your finger, and as you cut the neck, what happens? It turns into an avela and kachim at the same moment. It's an avela. So up until this moment, it was, if a kain were to eat from it, he's over Isser. What Isser? Mi'ila. He's using kachim. So it all happens simultaneously. It's not two-step. It's not a two-step thing. It only happens simultaneously. This moment you cut the neck, everything happens in one shot. So it's impossible to have an Isser Kailal by the final case. How are you telling me? The attempt was, they were telling me, the whole machlekes is in an Isser Kailal. No. Zar Shachal Melika, the final case, is not an Isser Kailal, it's a Bevas Achas Isser. It happens simultaneously. So we can't, that attempt is no good. So attempt number 2 is that the whole machlekes in these 3 cases is in a case of Bevas Achas. When the Isser happened in one shot. I have a riddle here. How is it possible to have the Isser of Eshes Ach and a Chos Isha simultaneously? Let's take a look over here. When Reuven marries Rachel, she becomes a Eshes Ach. Rachel becomes a Eshes Ach to Yehuda. How does Yehuda over on Rachel on a Chos Isha? Only after he marries Leah. How is it possible? So think for a second. When Reuven gets married to Rachel, Rachel becomes what? A Eshes Ach to Yehuda. How is it possible that she's also a Chos Isha? He marries Leah first, so a Chos Isha was first. If Yehuda married Leah first, so Rachel became a Chos Isha that moment that he got married. She only became a Eshes Ach when Reuven got married. So if Reuven got married first, so she's a Eshes Ach and not a Chos Isha. So how does it happen simultaneously? Oh, you hear what Dr. Marty Dauber says? That's the answer. The 2 women sent one shliach to be mekadosh themselves to receive kiddushin. The 2 men sent money through one shliach. The one shliach gave it to one shliach to be mekadosh to 2 women. So it happened simultaneously. The 2 women, both brothers became married at the same split millisecond. So the Chos Isha and Eshes Ach happened together. Okay. Says the Gemara. So the whole machlekes was b'vas achas. V'aliba de Rabbi Yossi. Again, we're going to go in what Rabbi Yossi says, not what Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says you only chayiv 1. Rabbi Yossi says you chayiv 2 if you have a Chos Isha and Eshes Ach together. Don't worry, Tzadik. It's going to get easier. I'm telling you. Rabbi Chia is Sovar, and Rabbi Chia holds Rabbi Yossi b'isur b'vas achas mechayiv tarti. And this makes a lot of sense logically, like we explained before. When 2 Averis happen in the same moment, the Eshes Ach and the Chos Isha happen simultaneously, you should be over on 2. Because neither one is stronger than the other. Neither one knocks the other one out. No, not true. Even Rabbi Yossi holds you only get 1 Isser. Which one? Which one, if you were to decide, which one would you do? Eshes Ach or Chos Isha? Anybody? No? Which one should he get? A Chos Isha or Eshes Ach? Eshes Ach. Because a Chos Isha could disappear if one of the sisters dies, and Eshes Ach remains forever. So, what? Unless the Zibum. What? Yeah. Yeah. Talk to the Gemara. Voch Mai. Isur Basach Zika. Where am I? Rabbi Chia Sovar, Rabbi Yossi b'isur b'asachas mechayiv tartu b'kapor sovar lo mechayiv elochad v'hocha. Ma yisur b'asachas zikahocha. Zar. So what is it? Zar sheshimish b'Shabbos. How do you get in these 3 cases? How do you get vasachas? Okay, we just went through Eshes Ach and Chos Isha. How do you get vasachas? But how do you get in these 3 cases? How is it possible a person does avodah on Shabbos in 1 second? So says the Gemara, what happened was he's performing the avodah on Shabbos, and he became a gadol that moment. He got simanim of godless that moment. The havlu zoros v'Shabbos b'adad it happened in the same millisecond. I have a question for the Olam. Is there a problem to buy a lulav and an esrig from a kid that just turned bar mitzvah? He's selling in the street a lulav and an esrig. Is there a problem buying the lulav and esrig from him? Any issues? Anybody? Or another question. If a kid in shul wants to make kiddush, he just turned 13, he wants to make kiddush, is there a problem being yaitza from him? It was his bar mitzvah. So at his bar mitzvah, he just laid the whole parsha, And now he wants to be kiddush that Shabbos. Yaitza or not yaitza? L'chayre is not yaitza. Why? Because the only reason he is a gadol is because I'm assuming b'chazaka that he might have simanim. But that only works in the Rabbanans. It doesn't work with the Raisa unless you know 100% that he's a gadol. Yeah, okay. I'm talking about the Raisa. So I cannot buy a lulav and esrog from him. And this is a serious problem. You go to these marketplaces, you see a little kid, whatever, he looks, you bar mitzvah, yeah? He has no right to give you the lulav and esrog. He's 13. I don't know that. It's only chazaka, and I need to know for one. I'm just throwing it out there. Weiter. What? No, any their rices? No, they won't let a kid like that lay in Parshas Zacha. No. Parshas Zacha they won't allow. Yeah. Says the Gemara. I'm just throwing it out there. Okay, great. Balmum nami. The same thing happens with balmum. Kigoin da'isi shtei saris v'tamele. Not Rashi. It's not that he had 2 saris and then he became tamei. He became tamei and then he got 2 saris. The 2 saris made him happen simultaneously. Inami shechatach etzboi, very nebach case. He cut his finger off. B'sakin tmeya. Now Tobias asked the question: what happened? He took a knife, and the knife is tamei, and it chopped off his finger. So he became a balmum and tamei in the same millisecond. There's a little slight problem here, because the moment that the knife touches him, just touches his skin, he becomes tamei, and he becomes a balmum a fraction of a millisecond later, the 2 fractions of a second apart. It didn't happen simultaneously. When the knife touches, it goes boop. You see it in slow motion. Tamei, balmum. They happen one after another. So one pshat is that his finger was severed. Not that he was a balmum, but and then that's Tobias' pshat. But if you look in the side over here, it says over here by the Reinu Chananel, he says that another Rishonim that because it's so quick and so we're not gonna differentiate. It's considered mamish b'vas achas, even though they happen milliseconds apart. Okay. Says the Gemara, so this is a very, very interesting Gemara. Listen to this. What happened yesterday? When you have these 3 cases, Rebbe Chia comes along and says, I swear that I heard Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, the Mechaber of the Shisha Sidri Mishnah, say that in these 3 cases, on the screen, if a Zar does the Avodah Beis Hamikdash, he's chayiv 2. Either 2 karbanos, whatever the pshat is, 2 yisurim. I swear I heard it. Comes Bar Kapara and he stands up, he says, I swear I heard Rabbi say 1. The Gemara is very concerned about this. The Gemara says, what was each other thinking? When he hears him swearing, he must have had his own pshat. Why is he swearing? He needs to understand why he's swearing. You heard something, but why is my friend swearing? He's not a katlikanya. He's not a little kid. These are g'daylim talking, that they heard the Rebbe say the exact opposite of what I heard. So there must be a pshat here. So I'll tell you what the pshat is. A very simple pshat. Says the Gemara, I can understand what Rebbe Chia was thinking in his head. I heard it according to Rebbe Yossi. Rebbe was explaining to Rebbe Yossi, and Rebbe Yossi holds the chayiv 2. And when Rebbe, yes, Bar Kapara heard a good shir. It was a shir about Reb Shimon. And Reb Shimon always holds that when you have 2 yisurim like a zar and Shabbos, you only chayiv 1. Okay, that's how I could explain my friend swearing. He's not meshuga. But what in the world was Bar Kapara thinking? Bar Kapara is of the opinion that even according to Reb Yossi, there's only 1. There's no Reb Yossi, Reb Shimon. According to everybody, Bar Kapara holds it's only 1 chiyuv. So what in the world was he thinking when his friend got up there and screamed, I swear that you chayiv 2. Our Rebbe told us 2. By the way, I was thinking about this. I never thought about this. An incredible thing. You know who my Rebbe is? One of my Rebbeim? Reb Yehuda Lefkovich. I learned in Panim Yeshiva Ktana. Reb Yehuda Lefkovich. And I'm reading over and over and over. The Reb Chaim Kanievsky's Rebbe was Reb Yehuda Lefkovich. This is Reb Chaim Kanievsky, who's 90-something years old. Reb Chaim Kanievsky and I share the same Rebbe. It's crazy. I guess I'm not that far away from that. It's very scary. I mean, we're 40 years apart. So Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz taught when he was very young, and I got him when he was very old. But anyways, I never thought about it. We share the same Rebbe, and he quotes him because a lot of the stories I was reading after he was nifter, they quote. He asked him, "What did Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz say like this, and how did he teach?" He always said, "This was my Rebbe." He's an unbelievable Magid Michael Yehuda Lefkowitz. Anyway, did I say where? In Panevis Yeshiva Katan in Shir Gimel. And Reb Steiman was the parallel shir, and even though Reb Steiman was considered back then, he was considered more of a gadol, so to speak. He was more in the G'dolim cards, whoever's collecting, whoever decides who's a gadol not. But everybody wanted to be Reb Yehuda Lefkovitz's shir because he was considered the better Magid shir. Anyway, fine. Says the Gemara, Elo, so where am I holding? So since it doesn't make sense what Bar Kapar is holding, so we can't say that's the machlokes. So Elo, I lost my train of thought here. I forgot to say those words. Bar Kapara holds that even according to Rabbi Yossi, there's only one Aveira. So what? He's getting up, his friend is getting up and swearing that you chayiv two Aveiras. He's lying. Let's switch it. The same exact thing that we said up until now, the machlokes is in a case where it happened simultaneously and we went through the whole drill. How do you have simultaneously? He became a gadol mamish on Shabbos when he's performing the avodah. He became a gadol when he's tamei and he's missing a limb. Or like Marty Dauber said, they received the kedushin two shlichim. It happened simultaneously. Fine. But the machlokes is not in what Rabbi Yossi said. The machlokes is in what Reb Shimon said. Reb Shimon, who the whole Torah says, ein isur chalal isur, one isur doesn't go on another isur. But perhaps in this special case of basacha, since it's so strong, maybe there are two isurim. Why is it so strong? Because it happens simultaneously. Okay, great. Now let's understand this one. According to Reb Chia, why am I swearing? Now let's just understand. Why did he get up and swear? What's the point of swearing? Oh, makes a lot of sense. I'm swearing. Because the whole Torah, Reb Shimon holds what? Yechayiv how many? One. And I'm swearing to you that today Yechayiv two. I need to swear. I need to swear. I need to make my point. So, no, that's I'm not holding there. Because that's not what Reb Shimon typically holds. Reb Shimon holds one aver. If the person is over two averis, you only chayav for one. So I'm trying to swear to show you how strong Rebbe meant it. I believe that's what Rebbe said, and therefore you chayav two. I need to swear because that's not what Reb Shimon typically holds. But kapara is all he's saying is Reb Shimon is l'shitase. Reb Shimon is going in his what he always says. You only chayav one. So what happened today? You only chayav one. So why did I need to swear? Kasha. Okay, it's not the world's biggest kasha, but it's a kasha. Now Bar Kapara is thinking to himself, what's going on here? We have machlokes in Reb Shimon. So when Rebbe taught it to me, he was teaching it to me according to Reb Shimon. Why in the world does Rabbi Yossi think that you chayiv two? Because, why did Rabbi Chia think that you chayiv two? Because when Rebbe taught it to him, he was teaching him Rabbi Yossi Shita, and Rabbi Yossi holds you chayiv two. But according to Rabbi Chia, so Rebbe taught him in Rabbi Shimon chayiv two. What is he lying? Amalach. Listen to this. I think this is unbelievable. This pshat over here. Amalach, Rabbi Chia Kasni, Rebbe Lididei. Rabbi Chia is trying to be melamed zechus. What was Bar Kapara thinking? What was Bar Kapara thinking when Bar Kapara said you're only chayav one? Limud zechus. Now it's like a 5-step limud zechus. You never heard of anything like this in your life. The Gemara makes a cheshbon. What Reb Chia is thinking? Why would his friend get up and say something that doesn't make any sense? I heard my Rebbe say the Yechayiv two, And Bar Kapara gets up and says, I swear I heard my Rebbe say Chayev 1. There must be something going on. Comes Rebbe Chia with the whole svara. Like imagine, I was just thinking, imagine you're in the middle of shul, the Rebbe gives a drasha, he's in the middle of giving a drasha, and a guy gets up in the middle of the whole shul, walks over to the Rav, gives a smack in the face. Smack in the face. So you have to start being Melamed Zechus. Maybe the guy gave a smack in the face because he insulted his wife. His wife's a little sick, and it makes him this and that. Oh, you have to be Melamed Zechus. Even smacking the Rav in the middle of a drasha. You have to be Melamed Zechus. So over here, he's going into the whole Torah to be Melamed Zechus. What happened? Listen to the story. Kiasne Rebbe Lididei. So Rebbe taught Bar Kapara Chayev 1, but he only taught it to him Tarte Liftur Asne. He only taught it to him about these two first cases, the red and the blue. Oops, I just touched something. The red and the blue. He didn't tell it to him about a zar. And we said a zar is very different. A zar Shacham Malika only happens when it happens simultaneously. It doesn't happen B'Isr Koil. But Rebbe taught it to him in those two cases. And of course, so basically Bar Kapara is not lying. Bar Kapara made a big boo-boo. He made a mistake. What was the mistake? Because when Rebbe taught Bar Kapara, he only taught him two cases. And now we're turning to Daf Yomi Beis, sponsored by Moshe Horn in honor of Jolly Joe Kraus and family, in honor of Ed Kinsbursky, Brian Kinsbursky, and Ari Miller for learning the Daf. The Isser Koilasniye. He only taught him about Isser Koilol. And Isser Koilol, he said, fine, that you're only Chayev 1. Isser Koilol is very weak. So even though you're adding other things to it, it's weak. You only Chayev for one Avera. Va'aliba the Reb Shimon. And Reb Shimon always holds you Chayev only one. But what happens if it's Isser Bevasachas, like Zor Shachal Malika? Then you'd be Chayev 2. Rebbe is only talking about two cases, the red and the blue. And that's why Rebbe told Bar Kapara, you only Chayev 1. You know what happened? Bar Kapara got confused. For some reason, Bar Kapara decided, hey, let me just stick in another case here, just to make it more interesting. Another case of something with Avodah, with the Beis Hamikdash, Zor Shachal Malika. Okay, he stuck it in himself. Rebbe didn't talk about the green case. And later on, he convinced himself, by chazering it over and over and over, he convinced himself that he heard it from his Rebbe. That's a limud zechus. Let's see inside. The chazel Bar Kapara lezar shacham malika made a lot of sense to Bar Kapara that the green case is also part of these cases. They only chayev 1. Because it's very similar to the cases before, because it's in the Beis Hamikdash and it's a zar, whatever, it made sense to him. Arva ba'adayu, he mixed them up in one big jumbo, whatever it's called, mumbo jumbo. And he made 3 cases out of it, and he started repeating it himself over and over. A year goes by, another year goes by, and all of a sudden, he convinced himself that that's what his Rebbe taught him. Even Zor Shachal Vayimba. So now he's chazering Balpeh. They didn't have any, writing. It's Balpeh. Rebbe, my Rebbe taught me that even though the guy did 2 Averis, he's only chayev 1. For instance, Zor Shachal B'Shabbos. Another case is a guy's missing a limb. And another case that I stuck in and I forgot I stuck in is a Zor Shachal Malika. And then one day he starts making a cheshbon. Whoa, time out. A Zor Shachal Malika, the Zor that ate a bird that was shechted with a thumb. Wait a minute. The only way it could happen is bivasachas. Oh, so Memela, the other 2 cases are also bivasachas. He convinced himself. It's mamish mistake. An honest mistake. Since the green cases happened simultaneously, and everything is potter. You only chayev for 1. The red and the blue are 1. So the green is also chayev 1, but it's not true. The green you'd be chayev 2 averis because it happened simultaneously. But he forgot that he convinced himself that, okay. That's what Reb Chia is thinking that Bar Kapara must have thought. That was his mistake. Yeah, that's a pretty big. I was thinking to myself, look, has it ever happened to anybody? Like you lost your keys. I don't know, something. You lost something important. You lost $1,000 somewhere. And so you start looking. You open up the drawer. You look in the drawer. It's not there. 100% it's not there. You go to the next drawer. And then you go to the bed. All of a sudden you start panicking. Like, I need to go. I need my keys. So you go back to the same drawer that you checked. You know you checked there. But you check again. Maybe it fell in there again, but it's impossible. You checked there. No, you do it again. Why? Because that's how we are. So when you look, you melamed zechus, sometimes it's one of the most difficult things to do, but you have to check like you're looking for your keys in the same place. You have to turn everything over. Look at this limud zechus. It's like step after step, like a part of thought, and he added it, and then he made a mistake, and then he forgot, and then he asked the question, and okay, fine. Meisvei. Zar sheshimish b'Shabbos. Just now it's getting easier. Zar sheshimish b'Shabbos u'balmum sheshimish b'tuma. Yesh ka mishum zoros u'mishum Shabbos. So the first two cases, you have two averis, u'mishum balmum u'mishum tuma. You have two isurim in each case. Divri Rabbi Yossi. Okay, so we're talking about the two cases, red and blue. Guess what's missing? Malika, Vilu Malika Sharia. It was left out completely. That would be a big problem to who? To Reb Shimon. To Bakapara that we just explained. Leman Sharia, why is it left out? Eli Miller Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Yossi, that says what? In the two first cases, you're chayiv two averas. Hash the Rabbi Yossi b'ser koil mechayiv shtayim b'ser vasachas mebaya iser vasachas milika. Of course, you chayiv two. It's much easier to understand you chayiv two. Why would he leave it out? El alav Reb Shimon says you only chayiv one in the first two cases. Ub'ser koil depatar al b'ser vasachas mechayiv. The reason why it's left out is because you really chayiv two on the green. Red and blue you chayiv one avera, but green you chayiv two. That's why it's not in the list. And who's that a question on? Tiyufta the bakapara, tiyufta. That's a very strong kasha. And now, a brand new sugya. We're done for today, at least, with Isser Maisev and Isser Kail. So if you didn't understand the word, it's okay. Here we go, brand new sugya. Zar, that's the beauty of Daf Yomi. If it's too difficult, there's always a brighter day ahead. Zar sheshimish b'Shabbos. Just a technical question. How is the Yisroel chayev on a avodah on Shabbos? Think about it. What in the world can you possibly do in the Beis Hamikdash that's Chil Shabbos? Shchita is mutter. Anybody, a woman can do shchita. What do you do? Oh, but makter is only a lav. It's not the end of the world. What? Light a fire. Very good. No, the Gemara is going to ask you a question. You're going to see in the Gemara. So, very good. B'mai, if, how's he Michal Shabbos? He did shchita? Shchita b'zor k'sheira. Yisroel is allowed to do shchita. Not a problem. V'i b'kabala v'yilacha. Here's a picture. Kabbalah is this kohen with the golden kli. One kohen is doing shchita. That's mutter, even Yisroel is allowed to do it. And the one receiving the blood, he's receiving the blood in a vessel. And then he takes that blood and he brings it all the way to the Mizbeach. What's the asur with that? Why is that a Issa Deraisa? What did he do wrong? For that he's chayev? What? He's carrying something. So there's no, first of all, there's no, and worse comes to worse, maybe it's muktzah. Maybe. Why is it muktzah? Because you're not supposed to be doing it. So if you're not supposed to be doing it, it's muktzah. But that's only the Rabbana. Ibak Torah. Oh, Haktara. Here, that's what you guys were saying. That's what he was saying. Fire, Haktara. If you remember, we're talking about Rabbi Yossi himself, the famous Rabbi Yossi, in Masechet Shabbos. Why does the Torah, from all the 39 malachas, the Torah talks about fire? Why? It doesn't talk about tzeidah and all the 38 other malachas. It talks about fire. Why? Machlokes. Either to tell us that that's the one out of the 39 you're not chayiv misa for. You only chayiv a lav, it's a lav. If you remember, I forgot who it was, the Imri Emes, I think, says, why is it the only one that is a lav? Why fire? From all the 39 malachas. Because he says, because that was the one that wasn't there on Shabbos. The first Shabbos didn't exist. Remember when there was fire? On Matzah Shabbos, that's why we do Havdalah. So it wasn't there, so it's L'lav Yatsa. That's why it's different than all the other 39 malachas. It's excluded. Fine. Says the Gemara. So, even making a fire, Hakdara, is only a lav. For that, we're not talking about two averis. We're talking about a iser kares that if you do b'shoy, you chayiv a carbon. Over here, you're not chayiv a carbon. We're talking about shechting the cow of the Kohen Gadol. You're telling me that all shechita is mutter for Yisroel to do. Yes, but there's one animal that Yisroel can't do, and that's the par of the Kohen Gadol when on Yom Kippur. So in other words, we're talking about on a Yom Kippur, not a regular Shabbos. Yom Kippur. And that's the two Averos. So why does it talk about a Yisroel? Any Kohen in the world can't shech. There's only one person that can shech in the entire world, the Kohen Gadol himself. You're right. Says Gemara, you're 100% right. So then why say the word zar? It's referring to all kohanim. Shazar etzli kamar. It just doesn't mean Yisrael. Zar in this case means somebody that's not a kohen gadol. Mazkilo Ravashi midachatayis ktani or lavi ktani. Where does it say anything about a carbon or anything about a lav? All I care about is how many surim are on this object. Is it two isurim, one isur? I never mentioned any word about how many korbanos you have to bring, how many lavim you're over. I'm saying how many isurim, even derabanan, isurim derabanan, even muktzah, even muktzah. So then l'may nafkamina, who cares? So if it's muktzah, he's over on muktzah and he's over on tumah, two things. So, or what's the case? Zar on Shabbos. He's over on Shabbos and he's a zar. So, what's the difference if he's over one or two? Says the Gemara, like we had yesterday, l'kavroi ben rishayim gemurim. There's different cemetery plots. There's the plot for a guy that's a big Baal Aveira, and there's a plot for a tremendous Baal Aveira, a guy that does two Aveiras in one shot. He doesn't get buried with everybody else. The Bezin looks, they say, wow, this guy, wow, you remember that one time was Shabbos and he was a zar and he went into the Beis HaMikdash? No, he can't be buried with these Rishayim. These guys, they steal, this, that. No, that's a special. He goes into a special plot. We're not even talking about, like yesterday, we're talking about the guys that are killed with skila, they don't get buried, the guys that killed with hereg. Not that. We're talking about two Isurim versus one Isur. Interesting. Says the official mission is sponsored by the MDY Tehillim group, where we daven for Refuah, Yeshuas, and Shidduchim for Klal Yisrael, and not only Klal Yisrael, and for our MDY family. Join us at tehillim.imindav.com. Shnaim shekitzu shtei nashim. You have two brothers. This is one of the saddest things. You have two brothers who got engaged to two women. And they decided to do 2 for 1. They're brothers. You can save a little money. They'll do one wedding for both. Saddest thing ever. What a way to start your marriage. There's a switcheroo. They married the other one's wife by mistake. Or we'll see in the Gemara, but the Gemara says it's a mistake. Over here it's mashma that it happened on purpose. They exchanged wives. Look, even though they were just erusin, but right now they're over on Eishesish by bringing them in l'chuppah Eishesish. And if they're brothers, each one married a brother's wife. That's another Isser. What is this called? Isser Chal al Isser. Now what's very beautiful here is the Gemara gives us, the Mishnah gives us cases, and the Gemara is going to tell us that each case is something else. One is the Isser Moisef, one is the Isser Kailol, and one is a what? Vasachas. Very good. The Oilam's paying attention. And if these women that they married are sisters, two brothers married two sisters, I just got to point this out. I was talking to a guy, talking to them about girlfriends, this, that. So I said, by the way, it's a big problem. Typical girl is a nida. He's like, yeah, but that's only if you get married. Like, no. It's asur. It's always asur. Boyfriend, girlfriend, isur, nida, which is a tremendous isur, kares. So throwing it out there because there's somebody watching there that might have this thought as well. Got to tell you, the isur nida is also on a pnuya, somebody that's not married. Okay, which most women today are nidois. So in the zechiyuv, kares. V'imhayu nidois mishum nida. Umafrishin oisan shloisha chadashim shema mubarisen. I think I said this once before. Now it's ringing a bell. I might have said it like a year ago or half a year. I don't know when. Someone's going to say, no, it's 2 weeks ago. Okay, fine, whatever. Umafrishin oisan shloisha chadashim shema mubarisen. So this is very, very sad. Think about it. You want to marry this woman. There's a little mistake happened there because they're Siamese twins. They're identical twins. You married sisters, let's say, and the pasha got mixed up. You can't be married to her. You have to wait 3 months. There's somebody here in Chicago. Well, he doesn't live in Chicago anymore. He moved. But somebody that I met, a very, very good friend of mine that lived here in Chicago. Maybe I shouldn't say the story because maybe they don't have. But he married a Giyaris. And when he became more and more frum, he realized that her gerus wasn't a real gerus. So they did another gerus, but the Bezdin made him separate from his wife for 3 months. The whole thing is very, very, very difficult. So over here, people, they're getting married, and because of the famous halacha that when you marry a woman after she's divorced, after she loses a husband, you have to wait 3 months to differentiate, to know whose child it is. But over here, it's even worse. What if she does give birth? The kid is a mamzer. It's Eishes Ish. He married Eishes Ish and had a kid from Eishes Ish. So we have to know that this kid is not a mamzer running around in Cheder, a mamzer running around. You have to know. So you have to wait 3 months. Maybe they're pregnant. If they can't get pregnant, because they're ktanos, the real husband can marry right away. And if they're kohanis, so we'll see what that means exactly. They become pasul kuna. They become pasul truma. Says the Gemara, the lashon echlifu means they switched up their wives on purpose. Doesn't make sense to say the Mishnah is talking about Rishayim. We can say the same exact. If you can say the same case that it happened by mistake, why would you say it happened by purpose? Sometimes you have to say it happened by purpose. That's the only way to say the case. But over here, not. V'su you have 4 cases in our Mishnah. 4 cases, yeah? 4 times 4, because you have 2 men who switch with 2 women. So you have 2 men and 2 women. Each one of the people in the case has to bring a carbon. So it's 4 people times 4 cases is how many? 16. So Reb Chia says, Arekan Sheshes Chatois is 16 Chatois in our Mishnah. Even Mezid, make a carbon. If they switched on purpose, you don't bring a carbon for something you do on purpose. A carbon is for a mistake. Or Rav Yehuda, Tani Chuchlefu, you're right. Our Mishnah is talking about by mistake, not on purpose. It's not Hichlifu. You have to understand it, that it means that they were there by mistake. Hachinami Mistabro, Diktani Seifa, Moyuktanish, and in Ruiz Leile, Magzinos Miyad. It says that you could, if she's a Ktana, she doesn't have to wait 3 months. Let her get married, let her stay married. If it was on purpose, you can't stay married to a woman who's mizana on purpose. That's not a good right. Says the Gemara, you couldn't be married to her. Why? Because she's a ktana and you convinced her, so it's the husband's fault. You convinced her, and va'oines b'Yisrael mishur shari, you let her take her back. Ela diktani, what's my big raya? Diktani, we're only going to do 3 more lines. You go home for Shabbos. Let's then the slide. That what it says all the way at the end of the Mishnah, that if you made a mistake, you can't be married to her for 3 months. Why? Because maybe they're pregnant. Halab mubar is sharian. In other words, we have to make sure that they're not pregnant. Mishari. But if they did it on purpose and they're a gdaila, now we're not talking about a ktana and there's pitui and there's oinus. Or we're talking about a gdaila. And the only concern that's in your head is that maybe she's pregnant and maybe there's a little mamzer. What about the fact that if you're mizana, you can never be married to that person anymore? Usher to the husband, usher to the bayil, usher to everybody. So the 2 brothers lost out on both women. Let's divorce them in Shalom Yisrael. It's the biggest raya. Hochlefu is by mistake. And that's why you can remain married. Very sad marriage. But nevertheless, Shmamina, it's a great raya. Yishkoyach Rabbi said, Motzi Shabbos, same place at 10:30 p.m. It's kind of late, but that's what we're doing. Is there going to be a little food, Be'ezer Hashem? Beis Hashem is a little food. So don't eat that much on Shabbos. Yishkoyach for coming. Have a great Shabbos.